Hello everyone, Sean Fitzhugh here, founder of Currency Collapse, and I'd like to welcome you to the Future of Gold presentation. This presentation is compiled of information and statistics reports that I've been compiling and researching for the past about month and a half now. The purpose of this presentation is to give you a thorough understanding as far as what gold is, what gold does in the global monetary system, and the future of gold relative to its potential price points and its roles in our global monetary system. Now, before we get started, I'd like to clarify that I am in no way a gold bug or a silver bug. I could honestly care less about the metals. I'm simply buying them because I believe they will be a good investment for the future, and I believe that once Wall Street and the rest of the world catches on to the role that gold is supposed to play, that the money will start to flood into the market and it will push the prices through the roof. When it comes to gold and silver, like I said, I don't care about them. The same thing with stocks and real estate. When I buy and trade them, I honestly could care less about them. I buy and invest things because I believe that other people will want to buy and invest the same things, and if you get in early enough and if you get in at a good price, you will be able to sell those assets at a profit because more and more people will be competing to buy those same limited assets. One more thing before we get started with the presentation, I'd like to clarify that the information that I am forwarding to you is information that was presented by credible resources. As far as the gold information, the numbers and statistics that I was able to compile and interpret that ambiguous information into the report that you see before you was provided by the World Gold Council. Other information such as US debt and the global debt and money supply were also taken from sources of credibility. So in no way am I trying to present this in a biased manner. I believe that the true path towards personal prosperity is personal education and unbiased information. Hopefully I can accomplish both of those today with this presentation. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Systems of exchange. Early systems of exchange use physical products and assets rather than currencies to exchange goods with one another. For example, a farmer may wish to trade his bull with his neighbor for 2 horses. Now, the transaction was able to be completed as long as both the goods had like value and as long as both parties agreed upon the terms. As you can imagine, the early problems with this system were unequal transactions. So for example, the farmer who wishes to trade 1 bull with his neighbor for 2 horses, the neighbor may only have 1 horse to trade. As a result of this, the transaction would either be canceled or the farmer would request additional assets to be traded for the bull. This early system of exchange that we refer to as a barter system was extremely inefficient for this main reason. So in order to make each transaction equal between the 2 parties, money was added to the equation. Early forms of money were, you guessed it, gold and silver. The reason why the free market chose gold and silver to be the financial units to conduct transactions are simple. Gold and silver are fungible, meaning there is a limited amount of them. Their rarity is what gives them value. Because precious metals are fungible and rare, economies have been using them as money for the past 4,500 years. However, the problem with currency or money has been and always will be government intervention. The moment government is added to the equation, money is almost always debased and devalued. The reason for this is simple. The government loves to spend. However, the government spending always seems to hit a wall where it cannot surpass. That wall is placed there because of gold and silver, because of precious fungible assets. And the reason why they hit that wall is because there cannot be any more gold and silver circulated into the market unless they mine for it. Well, it costs money to mine. So what governments have always done is they've debased their currencies either through adding additional metals to gold and silver, such as copper or bronze. And as they continue to debase their currency, eventually a paper currency is implemented. What I mean by paper currency, I mean a fiat currency, a currency that is not backed by precious metals or other fungible assets. Once governments have successfully severed the tie to real money, the same thing almost always occurs after, which is a rapid increase of the money supply. As governments flood the market with more and more fiat money, the price of tangible goods, such as the farmer's bull, rise in price rapidly. This is called inflation. What is deceiving about inflation is that all assets tend to rise as the money supply is increased, such as real estate, stocks, and other commodities. What this does is it usually tricks the public into thinking that they are experiencing an economic boom. However, what they are actually witnessing is an economic collapse, because their purchasing power is diminishing every time they see prices increase and their wages fail to keep up with inflation. Now that you understand the basic mechanics of a barter system and you understand the basic definitions of inflation, let's go ahead and move on. The next thing you have to understand is what gold is, the role that gold plays in a global monetary system. So what is gold? Gold is a form of money/currency. What is money and currency? The definition of currency is a current medium of exchange in the form of coins or banknotes, or anything that two parties are willing to exchange for like value. Referencing the example about the farmer and his bull, money can be any type of assets that can be exchanged for other goods or services for like value. For example, an Apple iPhone can be traded for a Sony PlayStation 3, a country farm can be traded for a suburban house, or 100 ounces of gold can be traded for $170,000, or a house being sold for $170,000. Money is also the assets, property, and resources owned by someone or something. These assets can be sold, exchanged, or collateralized for loans. However, all the above listed items are only considered a form of money if the two parties are willing to exchange them. If the two parties or the market as a whole are unwilling to exchange these forms of money for goods and services, then those forms of money lose their value because they cannot be traded for anything. The same goes for fiat currencies as well. The next piece of the puzzle that you have to understand is the money supply and debt. The money supply is the entire quantity of bills, coins, and loans, which is a form of debt, credit, which is another form of debt, and other liquid instruments in a country's economy. The money supply is divided into multiple categories, M0, M1, M2, and M3. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go over the definitions. You can pause this video and research these definitions on your own time. The other half of the money supply is debt. What is debt? Debt is an amount of money borrowed by one party from another. Bonds, loans, and commercial paper are all examples of debt. The outstanding debt and the money supply are essentially the same thing. When more money is needed, it is created in the form of debt and added to the money supply. If you doubt the claim that the money supply is debt and debt is the money supply, I suggest you take a look at the recent debt ceiling issue that our country and Congress were facing. For more money cannot be injected into an economic system without adding more debt to the system. Thus, debt is money and money is debt. Moving on to the next piece of the puzzle, fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking is a banking system in which only a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash on hand and are available for withdrawal, meaning that only a portion of capital is required to be held by the banks, not lent out. The way this works is, say you and I go to a bank and we deposit $100 into our bank account. The bank is then allowed to amplify that by 9 times, creating an additional $900 out of thin air. It then can take that newly created $900, add it to the $100 on deposit, and loan out a $1,000 loan. So whenever you and I deposit cash in a bank, our cash that is held in that bank is essentially a reserve deposit for somebody else's loan. This is also the reason why if you've ever tried to take out a large sum of money from a bank that wasn't yours, the bank will simply refuse to let you withdraw the money from their account. Whenever you withdraw physical cash from a bank, you're essentially removing that reserve requirement that is supposed to be held. Now, the key for banks to remain solvent, meaning that they are able to fulfill their financial obligations, money has to constantly be flowing in and out of a bank. For if money was to constantly flow out of a bank, the bank would become insolvent and loans would have to be called in. This is why bank runs are so dangerous. So to recap fractional reserve banking, it's simply I deposit $100 into a bank account. The bank then can use that $100 under a 10% reserve requirement to create an additional $900, package it with my $100 for a $1,000 loan, and loan it to a party. Now, assuming that party takes that $1,000 that it was just lent and goes and deposits that money into another bank, that bank that received that deposit can then take that $1,000, create an additional $9,000 out of thin air, package it with the $1,000 that was just deposited, and then lend out an additional $10,000 in loans. This is what we call in the industry shoveling money. This process can essentially continue forever so long as the interest is able to be paid on those loans. As a result of fractional reserve banking, we have an ever-increasing money supply. As I stated before, this money supply can continue to grow so long as the interest on those loans is always paid on time. What we essentially have by fractional reserve banking system is the illustration shown before you, where the original $1,000 deposit reserve can be lent and turned into $10,000. That $10,000 can be lent and turned into $100,000, so on and so forth. As a result of fractional reserve banking, we have this. This is a chart of the global money supply from 1970 until late 2008. As you can see, the chart illustrates a global money supply of around $2.5–3 trillion at the beginning of 1970, up into well over $60 trillion by late 2008. As of 2011, the total money supply / global debt is above $77 trillion. As I stated before, inflation tricks the public in making it appear that they're experiencing an economic boom. For all assets and commodities rise in price because there are more dollars or units of currency chasing the same limited amount of assets and commodities. So if you're looking for what truly makes stocks go up over the long run, look no further than an expanding money supply. Here is a chart of the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 from 1971 until late 2008. If you notice that they are almost identical to the money supply from the same time period.